Hi, my name is Dale Adams of Planning Ahead of Time, and this week I'm talking to Frances. Frances, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, I'm France's husband. I work for Swann Financial, which is part of St James's Place Wealth Management.
Okay, now, Frances, you and I have known each other years, but we re-met recently, actually, at a networking event that you're organising. So you've now set up a networking club.
Indeed, I have, yes. The networking group is called the Neighbourhood Network. It meets once a month on the first Wednesday of every month in Leamington. And it's sort of primarily targeted at local businesses, primarily. Obviously, it's open to anybody. But the kind of premise behind me setting up that group was really to give support and advice in whatever areas I can, and invite all the other members that come along to share on their experiences and their successes and failures in business, so that we can all come together and grow as businesses together.
Yeah, well, I've been to two, so I went to your launch event and then to the one recently. And the last one, the first one, it was somebody else, but the last one you were speaking about some of what you do. In fact, the first one, I did a video of a lot of the people there, all of which could offer services of some description to end of life, which obviously is what I do. And then at the last one, you actually did a presentation on some of your financial services. Again, a lot can be very relevant to people planning for end of life or when an end of life has happened. So I just wondered if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, indeed. So it's everyone's kind of got their own view on what financial advisors. I mean, it's hard to know sometimes what to call myself because yes, I am a financial advisor, but I much prefer the term as a financial planner because that is much more relevant for what I actually do. So sort of, day in, day out, it could be anything from planning and helping people with retirement planning or inheritance tax planning, end of life planning. I mean, it literally is as black and white as end of life planning, and that can sort of encompass quite a bit there with regards to planning with your inheritance tax, but obviously also planning long-term care needs might come up as well. So it's quite a broad spectrum of what I can offer, but sort of the bread and butter of what I do is more on that inheritance tax planning and making sure that people have got things in place ready for when the time comes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, because I mean, a lot of what I do from an end of life sort of planning scenario is to do with emotional, spiritual, what the person actually needs and wants for themselves. And there's an element of financial in that, in the fact that people will talk to me about their finances and we can have a look at various scenarios, often relating to what they want to gift to other people and how they see their wills looking, etc. But beyond that, it's totally out of my remit. That's where somebody like yourself or an estate planner, would come in. And again, estate planning has a lot to do with, if you like, the LPAs as well as the wills, etc. And yours then is more sort of the whole financial, isn't it? So I know very little about inheritance tax, I have to say. So would you like to give some guidance on that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a big topic. It's a juicy topic, and there are so many ins and outs and so many variables in it. But I think one thing I sort of really take from it is that, I mean, as well as I do, it's a very sensitive subject when you're talking about death and end of life, especially if you haven't yet got to that point. Somebody hasn't yet died, and we're talking about, you know, putting things in place to help plan for the inevitable, because it's an inevitable at some point we are all going to die. So it's having those conversations and being very, very sensitive. And I think the key take from it all is just making sure that people are aware that there are things that they can do to mitigate their inheritance tax liability, or if not completely, it's there are so many variables to it. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody wants to pay HMRC more than we need to pay HMRC. So why not speak to somebody like myself ahead of time? It doesn't matter whether you're 20 years old coming to have a conversation with me, or you're 70 years old and you're in retirement already. It's never too early to have these discussions. And in all honesty, the earlier you get advice, the better, because we've got longer to work with and get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I suppose that's it, isn't it? It's having that idea of where somebody wants to be at retirement and at their end of life, and then planning for that to make sure that the money that they want to have available to them is available to them, and they pay as little tax on it, I suppose, as is possible.
Yeah, completely. I mean, if you look at some of the figures out there and some of the stats, it is absolutely mind-blowing. In the 2023-2024 tax year alone, HMRC took £7.5 billion from the UK public in inheritance tax alone.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that all of that, could be completely mitigated, but very, very few people reach out and get advice. And sometimes until it's too late, and then there's very little we can do. There's always things we can do, but again, it's just planning ahead of time. Honestly, it really, really is planning ahead of time and putting in things in process to eliminate that need as and when the time does arise.
That's an incredible figure.
Yeah.
It's shocking, isn't it? Really. And like you say, people don't seek that advice. And I think what we do is we all Google a little bit. We have a look and then say, oh, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Or, well, we'll just deal with it when it happens. And then they end up with the big shock and wish that they'd have dealt with it before.
Yeah.
And
exactly. It's the thing within inheritance tax, specifically inheritance tax, the bills and the revenue paid to HMRC in inheritance tax will only grow. It's just grown year on year on year. And you can put that down to things just as simply as inflation and rising house prices. I mean, people's biggest asset in life usually is their property. Yes, there's things that we can do, and yes, there's a lot of allowances out there for people, but house prices are rising significantly. Therefore, you might have this conversation with family one year and say, oh no, I think we're okay. Suddenly 5 years has passed, that house has shot up in value, and oh, actually now I think I'm going to have a bit of a liability. I better talk to somebody. The sooner the better. I just can't stress that enough.
Yeah, well, again, you were in the housing market, so you know better than anybody that situation. And as you say, yeah, housing prices, when you consider it that way, yeah, they are constantly rising, and of course that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? And I suppose even for myself, it's the realization of what you've just said. Well, yes, if it's a lot of it's based on your property, and of course your mortgage should be coming down, or any liability you have on that property should be coming down, and therefore your equity is rising.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of experience, as you well know, in the property market, and day in, day out, I would see the result of people that hadn't prepared as best as they could have done had they known. And I think a lot of it comes down to people genuinely just don't realize there's help out there, and there are people you can talk to like myself that can help for plan for eventualities. And again, when you're on that receiving end and death has already occurred, we're already at that end of life stage, there's very little that can be done at that stage. But again, you're left with clients that are not only grieving and having to process the death themselves, they're then having to deal with something as what we'd see as simple as selling that house and then getting this inheritance and this money, and then kind of going, well, what now? Well, what do I do? I mean, that's what I mean. It's having those conversations and just mentally preparing yourself so that when the time does arrive, you're confident in what you're doing, you understand what's happening, and you've got something to put in place that works best for you and your family.
Well, it's obviously now sort of come as to how we know each other, which is through the housing market. You were an estate agent, you actually sold my property for me, hence we met a few years ago. And I think some of what you did as an estate agent working in housing was actually what prompted you to carry on into the financial side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And as I said, I've a lot of the clients and a lot of the people that I came across, you know, deceased estates and probate, and again, people selling their houses just to pay for care costs. It was very frequent, and it really, really hit a chord with me. And I wanted to do as much as I possibly could to really help these people, but at the time, I had to understand that the job I was doing then was just dealing with I had no option. I wanted to have got in there sooner. And I think the more I thought about it and the more I kind of really put my mind to it, I thought, do you know what? I wish I had got in front of these people sooner. I wish I'd been able to have that opportunity to have a conversation with them to mitigate some of this, to help alleviate some of this stress. I can't take away the grief they're experiencing, but had I just had a conversation with them a little bit sooner, this whole process that they're going through now could have been made a lot easier. So I think that for me was definitely the personal element of, okay, I know where I want to go. And that's where I transitioned over into the financial services industry.
Okay. So inheritance tax, as you say, is one of the big things that you do. What else is there that you're offering service-wise to people?
So financial services, I mean, it is a very, very broad spectrum. So things like retirement planning, so looking at all your pensions. And again, every advisor out there will have a different perspective and a different journey that they can take their clients on. With me, it's extremely important to take a more holistic view with all of my clients. So rather than focus on sort of the nitty-gritties of their income and their expenditure and all the black and white sort of transactional things, I like to look at it as a more holistic and life plan, if you like. So when I first sit down with my clients, actually, I won't have a conversation at all about their finances. If anything, that's secondary to me at that moment in time. I want to understand where they want to be, what are their goals, what are their aspirations, and then kind of lead on to, so what's happening now, where are you now, and make sure that I can help them as best as I can get them on that journey to where it is they want to be. So pensions, retirement planning, obviously we've covered inheritance tax planning, and then all the way through to investments.
Okay. Well, yes, I suppose at the end of the day, if you don't know what they want to achieve from their finances and you don't know where they are, then you can't put the steps in place. So I suppose that's what you need to know, isn't it? So that you can then put in some milestones and markers and ensure that you can take them through a process of transitioning from where they are to where they want to be. So yeah, that seems really important. And like you say, that's not all black and white, is it really?
It's certainly not, and it's not. There's no one size fits all at all. It's a very, very unique experience with all of my clients. And I try and keep it as far away as I can from the sort of transactional side of things. Like I said, I want to share with them in that journey and help them get there and focus on their goals and their aspirations and where they want to be and where they want to go. But that's not done through just one meeting. I want to share and be part of that journey with them. And that comes on, through regular ongoing advice, ongoing reviews, constantly looking at their situation, because as we all know, our lives change drastically, and sometimes they can change drastically at the drop of a hat. But life cycles, life events, death, divorce, children, marriage, family, they're all things that can help change people on their way. And I want to be part of that journey and just making sure I'm keeping them on track and adjusting things where I need to help them keep focus.
So you see it really as sort of a long-term relationship rather than it's a one-off, let's go through everything and then hand it back. It's very much a relationship that you're building with them as clients.
Yes, it's very, very important when you give any kind of advice when it comes to finances. What's right for you today coming to see me may not be relevant or right for you next year. Things could have changed. You know, we talked about your first appointment, we focused on pensions and your retirement, and we got that sorted. But now you're expecting a new baby. So what does that entail? Where do we go with that? What do you want to put in place? So again, it's that ongoing service to clients and just keeping them on the right track. And a lot of the time, I am there just to sometimes say, keep going, you're doing the right thing, you're on track, nothing needs to change. That doesn't mean that every meeting they have with me, we're moving the goalposts. We're just keeping them on track.
As you've just said, that time goes so quickly, doesn't it? Where you look at something and then suddenly you're 5 years ahead and you think, actually, so much has changed in that time. And I think we forget often how quickly time is passing, and we don't do enough checks and updates. I mean, often we get sort of the annual insurance comes through and it's a reminder that comes through and you think, oh my God, have we got to do that again already? Because it goes so quickly and life does change. And as you say, at the drop of the hat sometimes, and you need to have somebody there you can turn to speak with about that. So on that basis, does somebody sort of pay for you on an ongoing basis? Do you build a package around the person that you're working with?
It's very much tailored to somebody's needs and requirements. And as I said, there is no one size fits all, and there's different things I can do with different people depending on what they need at that time. But there's never a moment I turn around and go, right, you've had your advice off me, here's my invoice. That's kind of not how financial services works. But they're the sort of things that I would sort of go through, and I would disclose it sort of right at the beginning when I'm having the conversation. But those initial conversations, that initial advice and those sort of initial pointers, there's no charge for that. That's just a service that I offer just to sort of understand somebody and like I said, put in those goals as well. Where do you want to be? Where are we at now? Let's just have a look and take that holistic view. And then from then we'll look at some solutions, we'll look at some strategies. And if they'd like to keep on discussing that with me and allow me on their journey with them, then we'll discuss that at the time.
Okay, so people can as such have a free consultation with you just to go through some of the pointers that you're talking about, and then obviously you'll give them sort of a plan and how it would work moving forward if they want to have this working relationship with you.
Certainly. Nothing's done without their permission. Everything will be discussed and disclosed with them, but those key conversations and those initial appointments are absolutely crucial to me understanding them, but as well as for them to understand me and see, if the relationship is going to be a good working relationship. Do they want to work with me? Do I want to work with them? It's that whole sort of getting to know each other, and that's got to be established quite early on before you can really look at sort of implementing any strategies for people.
Yeah, perfect. So if somebody wants to get hold of you and arrange to have a consultation with you, how do they do that?
Certainly. So, I mean, as I think most of us are, glued to our mobile phones these days. So I am always contactable on my mobile number. All my details are on the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority website, so you can check me out there. And obviously you can also look at my company profile on the Swann Financial website. There'll be a little sort of about us and meet us. My profile will be there and all my contact details are there also.
Okay, so Swann Financial, it's actually spelt with a double N, isn't it? So
it is SWANN Financial. Their main office is based in Banbury. I'm rarely in the office, as you can imagine. I'm obviously on appointments, on Zoom, or at people's houses. But there's kind of no general area in which I work in. It's not like I have to work, even though I live around the Southern area, it doesn't mean that you have to live in Southern, Leamington, Warwick. I've got clients, you know, much further afield, over an hour away, some are a couple of hours away. That's the beauty of, you know, all of this sort of hybrid working that we can do. I love to go and visit people, and I want to see them face to face, because I think so much can be learned and gained from an experience like that. But we do have the beauty of what you and I are doing right now on Zoom and Teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's made it literally into a whole new world, hasn't it, from a working perspective? Do you want to give out your mobile phone number if that's your business contact?
I can. So you can contact me on my mobile, which is 07768 311 630.
Okay. And do you have a work email address?
Indeed, it is Frances. I will spell that because it is, if people do get it wrong. So Frances is FRANCES.husband, as in husband and wife, at sjpp.co.uk.
Lovely. Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Frances. It's been really nice to speak with you and let people know a bit about what you do.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Dale.